Our continual battle with these complicated issues, and I use the term battle because that's really what it was. It was this battleground between us that swiftly eroded our connection and nearly destroyed our relationship. But a major turning point for us was simply acquiring knowledge. And like Ron Deal said, we just had to get smart about how we approached our blended family marriage.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey there. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
We are always so excited to have you with us. Hey, if you have not hit subscribe yet, hit that because you don't want to miss any upcoming episodes. And while you're there, we would love like a simple star rating, whatever you think. Just hit the star. It'll take you like literally like 1 second. If you want to take a few more seconds and leave a review, we would love to hear your feedback and love to hear how we might be helping you.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to just go ahead and jump right in today. Yeah. And as we jump into this episode, and we're jumping into the month of February, and with Valentine's Day right around the corner, we thought it'd be fun and maybe helpful to focus on love and marriage throughout the month. Like, what better month to focus on love and marriage than February?
It's a little cheesy, but cheesy
It's okay.
can be good. Yeah.
Hey, cheesy's fun. Yeah. And you know what? There's a few reasons behind it, and it's not just about Valentine's Day.
Of course.
It's really around why we feel it's important to focus on marriage at this time.
Yeah, first, for many of us, the COVID-19 pandemic has created some challenges in our relationships. We've all been struggling now for months, almost a full year now, with abrupt changes in our work and home life and a lot more stressors than we usually have to deal with, right? We've heard some statistics that the divorce rate has gone up since COVID hit, which has been a direct result of added stress in the home, and it's really tragic.
Sure.
And we have heard about many of the struggles that couples living in blended families have come up against this past year. We've all had our fair share of difficult issues to navigate.
That's right.
Things like being quarantined all together for long periods of time, which can be tough because we know that for blended families, the tension is usually highest when everyone's together. So there's going to be some stressors. And step parents have been left alone for extended periods of time with their stepkids because of work and school schedules that have now changed. One stepmom told us that she really misses her time alone in the house when the kids were at school, and that it's been really hard for her not to have that time that she usually used to do some self-care and to recharge her battery. And that COVID has left her battery running low.
Yeah, it's been a battery drainer for
and
sure.
Her patience low as well, understandably.
Patience and battery level, energy levels are kind of connected.
Yeah.
And of course, with all the COVID restrictions, it's been a challenging season for us to just get out for a simple date night.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we've personally been struggling with this one. Traveling is difficult. Restaurants are closed for dining. Our movie theater, like here locally, our movie theater's been closed for almost a solid year. And that's like devastating for us. I don't use the word devastating very much. Yeah. That's kind of our go-to date night. We love going to the movies together and talking about, we could have been movie critics in another life.
We could have.
Yeah.
We're really good at that, actually.
Yeah. Well, to us, we are.
We think we are, yeah.
So many of our usual options just aren't available, or at the very least, they look extremely different. Events and activities have gone online, which seems to sometimes almost defeat the point of getting out and spending focused time with each other. Now, as we kind of whine and complain about all this, we want you to know that at the end of today's episode, we actually have a fresh idea and an opportunity for you to get creative around all of it. And we never want to challenge you with something that we're not willing to do ourselves. So we'll be using this idea right along with you as we move throughout the month of February.
Right.
So make sure to stick around to the end for that. We'll talk about that in just a bit.
Okay, so it's not just COVID that's impacting our marriages. The truth is, it's essential to spend time focusing on how to nurture our marriage relationship and build more connection as a couple. Because your relationship is the foundation of your family, right? If the marriage falls apart, the family will also fall apart, creating more instability, more loss, and grief for everyone.
Yeah, that's right.
Your marriage is the reason your blended family even exists. So you've got to make it a top priority. And we really want to support and encourage you in doing that.
Yeah.
Intentionally investing in your couple relationship and providing your family with the foundation and the stability it needs to truly thrive. So we'll be spending the whole month of February focusing on some important aspects of love and marriage that are unique to blended family couples, of course.
Love
Oh, gosh.
Anyway.
We're getting off.
As we digress. Now, as you've listened to this podcast, and if you've listened for any length of time, you know that we've had our fair share of challenges as a couple.
Right.
And we're coming up on 20 years of marriage here in next month, actually. And we've experienced low points that came actually close to ending our relationship. We've also experienced the joy and the beauty of getting to the other side of a lot of those low points and figured out what it's like to experience thriving in our marriage. We've had to fight for our relationship, and we've had to fight for our family. We had to take intentional action and stay determined as we work through a lot of painful issues and difficult circumstances. It's actually incredible. It's a miracle that we actually get to coach married couples now. And it's an amazing testament to what can be done when we choose to dive in and really do whatever it takes to get healthy and find a hopeful place together.
Yeah.
When we refuse to give up, even when things are really hard, that makes a huge difference. And we believe that if we can get there, so can you. We really believe that. So whatever the condition of your relationship is right now, and even if you're listening to this on your own, your spouse just isn't willing to get help or do anything new at the moment, we want to encourage you to listen in and take note of some of the things we're going to talk about. Because we'll be sharing things that we've learned over the years that have impacted our marriage and that we've learned that impact many marriages that we get to support. And we're hopeful that what we have to share with you over these next several weeks is going to bring practical value, encouragement, and hope to your marriage as well.
That's
we all
right.
need to have hope.
Absolutely. And we're going to kick off February by simply talking about some of the differences between a first family marriage and a blended family marriage.
Yeah.
Because understanding these differences and the challenges they create will give you a solid mindset. You might need to readjust some of your expectations around marriage, and understanding these differences will ultimately help you to safeguard and strengthen your blended family marriage.
That's right.
Now, back in episode 72, we talked about how our common sense around relational bonds can get us into trouble.
Or
right?
not so common sense.
Yeah, common sense within blended family dynamics doesn't seem to serve us well. And along those same lines, most of us have some reasonable expectations about marriage going in, but we can quickly become blindsided by the realities that we simply didn't see coming.
Yeah, that's right. And many of us start off holding on to the expectation that a blended family marriage is just going to be a lot like a first family marriage, that they're somewhat similar and that they should operate under the exact same marital principles as a first family marriage. But the reality is they're simply different.
Yes.
They're not the same. It's not about being better or worse or right or wrong. It's just different, and that's okay. And so what we want to do is uncover and start to understand the differences so that we can respond in a healthy and more effective way that's going to protect our marriage for the long term. Now, we've heard it said that knowledge is power. So today is all about gaining some knowledge, some insight that you're going to need so that you can have that power to get through the challenges and not stay hung up when your expectations don't match your reality, right? Which will most likely happen at some point. And really, that's where discouragement, disappointment, or even hopelessness can start to set in. But with some shifts in our perspective and just resetting a few of our expectations, you might actually be able to avoid some of that.
Absolutely. So that's where we're going today. And, even if you've been married for a while and you've already faced this reality and dealt with your own unrealistic expectations.
Well, some of them anyway.
We want you to stick with us today because there might be a few takeaways to help you to continue moving forward. Because as we know, blended family life comes with many ups and downs along the journey, along the way, right? Things can quickly change and we want you to be prepared.
Totally.
So before we dive in, we just want to mention our friends Gil and Brenda Stewart, who are marriage coaches and counselors and also support blended family couples as well as being a blended family themselves.
Yeah, Gil and Brenda, they're great.
Yeah. So we referred to one of their articles for this episode, and it's called Remarried Couples Can Be Astronomically Different. Here's How. So we want to thank them for that, and we'll add that article to our show notes as well if you want to check it out. So let's start out with a thought that most of us don't think about that often. One major difference between a first family marriage and a blended family marriage is that blended families are originally formed out of loss and pain. So let me explain this a bit. My blended family experience really started when my ex and I were divorced. During that process, I wasn't really thinking about meeting anyone and getting remarried. But because of my age and life circumstances, the probability of living in a blended family sometime following the divorce, it was pretty high.
Sure.
And that loss of my previous marriage was the event that started my journey and my daughter Annika's journey into blended family life. Now, I did some counseling along the way, but the truth is that both Annika and I came into this new marriage with Mike relatively soon after experiencing that loss of a marriage and some very painful wounds. Some that were clear and already healing, but others that were more hidden and unexpected.
Yeah, and although I had never been married before, I previously had a long-term relationship and was even engaged, but we broke it off just 6 weeks before our wedding. So I had some painful relational baggage coming into our marriage as well. And it's not always just about divorce that creates a loss. Sometimes abandonment or the death of a loved one's in our history. If you know anything about my story, you know that this was the case for my family of origin. My blended family experience really started when my mom passed away and I was just 1 year old. Lots of challenges came along the way after my dad remarried, and much of it was tied to the loss and the pain for my dad as well as for us kids. You know, the reality is that no two blended families experience exactly the same circumstances. And whether your journey started because of a death or some kind of a separation like a divorce, most of us enter into blended family life with some emotional wounds and some painful baggage that we've been carrying around with us. Often there's lingering pain or shame, some hang-ups from the past, and this will eventually impact your current relationship. And according to Gil and Brenda's research, 58%, almost 60% of people who remarry have not effectively dealt with their past pain.
Wow, that's telling. So the presence of previous loss and pain will typically create some challenges for a remarried couple. And we've personally had to cope with this in our marriage. And I've spent plenty of time working with a therapist to process and move beyond the emotional pain and loss of my previous marriage. And we recommend counseling or coaching support to anyone who's ready to work through those past hurts and hangups. Now, back in episode 5, we talked about how our past relationships can impact our current one. We explored relational replays, which is the tendency we all have to view new relationships through the lens of our previous experiences. We talked about touchy triggers, the difficult feelings and the emotions that come along with those relational replays. And then irrational influencers, the stories we form about each other or our current situation as a result of our experiences from the past.
Yeah, and you might want to go back and check that out. The episode is called How to Get Over the Hurts and Triggers from Your Past. And like Kim said, it was back in episode 5. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes. So as you think about this specific difference between a first family marriage and a blended family marriage, you might want to ask yourself some questions like, what might be a lingering pain from my past experience that's holding me back from fully connecting with my current spouse? And then as you discover, maybe 1 or 2 things in there, you might ask, well, what's one thing that I can do to take a step forward in healing that pain? It might be that you want to reach out for some professional support. And if you decide you're going to do that, we want to encourage you to be sure that whoever you reach out to has specific experience or training in working with blended family dynamics. Or maybe for you, it's just going to be as simple as going back to listen to this episode we just talked about. The point is not to allow residual pain from previous losses to rob you of the connection and the enjoyment that you might find in your current marriage. Like that's the core point of all this. Okay, well, let's move on to another difference between a first family marriage and a blended family marriage. Now, we all know that when a family blends, there will inevitably be some stress, right? Like, tell me something I don't know, right? And yes, you can say that about first family marriages too, but with blended families, there's actually built-in stressors that often create big challenges right out of the gate.
We've often said the blended family couples really don't get a honeymoon stage, right? When kids are part of the package and those kids have other connections outside our home, and those connections are part of our co-parenting community who also happen to be tied to our own emotional pain because they're ex-spouses, and those ex-spouses have their own agendas and opinions about how to parent the kids that are living in your home. Well, you can see how stressful situations are bound to be prevalent.
I'm feeling stressed just listening to all that.
It's crazy things. And even if you have a good co-parenting relationship with the other home, there are usually still some stressors that pop up.
Yeah, that's right. Listen to this quote from step family expert Ron Deal. Ron says, blended family couples swim in a different ocean than first family marriages. I love that image.
Do too.
Yeah. The step family ocean has a cooler temperature. Step relationships tend to have a little less warmth. Most everyone in a step family has experienced a significant loss that is always just under the surface. This ocean has more sharks, those former spouses, co-parenting issues, and the stress of merging, just to name a few. And the water is less clear. Step family life's murky. Roles are unclear, rituals and traditions are hazy, and relationships lack definition. To navigate this ocean well requires that you understand and follow healthy blended family principles, because the relational structure of a blended family is different than a biological family. You have to get smart about step family living. And Ron goes on to say that couples in a step family have more internal and external stressors on their relationship than most couples. That's really what we're talking about today. The first step in getting smart is just to understand these challenges and understand that they exist.
Exactly. In a blended family, we're essentially merging 2 separate and distinct cultures, 2 ways of doing family life. It's natural and it's normal for stress to go hand in hand with the arduous process of becoming a family together.
Yeah.
As a couple and a family, we're discovering who we are. We're finding our shared identity and our new family rhythm. And there's going to be tension, especially in the first 7 years for most of us. Why do I say that? Well, research shows it takes an average of 7 years for a blended family to merge and form a shared family identity. For blended family couples, patience, endurance, knowledge, determination, and healthy, smart strategies are essential tools that they're going to need from the beginning in order to survive and truly thrive. And this includes safeguarding their marriage.
That's right. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mike and Kim, it seems like you're stating the obvious here, And on some level, that's true. And it's also true that there are times when we simply need to get back to basics. Remembering these simple realities of the fact that our journey started with some kind of loss and that there are built-in unavoidable stressors can change our mindset and actually help us to reset some expectations, which ultimately leads to less disappointment and actually increases our hope. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we get to recognize that some of the challenges we face are simply normal and that we're not messing up or we're not messed up in some way, right? And if these things are known challenges, then there's also some possible known solutions. Mm-hmm. And that means we can do something about it. So these are important things to be reminded of, to kind of ponder, and then to resolve to do something that's going to build connection in our marriage and in our blended family. And that really leads me to another difference between a first family and a blended family marriage that we really need to be aware of. And that is the challenge of unforeseen disconnection. For blended family couples, this is so common. It's something we've experienced in our own marriage. It's something we read about continually in all the research. It's something that we hear about from almost every single couple that we've had the privilege of supporting over the years. Here's how it goes. We begin our relationship like everyone else, right? We spend focused time connecting and our relationship's growing deeper as we get to know each other and we start falling in love. Things are really exciting. And while we're in that dating stage, we'll share information about real life circumstances. Sure, we know there's complications like kids and co-parenting relationships and so on. But we also have this tendency to kind of paint some things in a positive light, right? Maybe it's mostly positive, but people are going to naturally show the best facets of themselves and really about their life when they're in that dating stage, because we want to put our best foot forward. This is really normal human behavior. And when we do finally introduce the kids to each other, the kids tend to also be on their best behavior, especially really early on. So it's understandable why we might start out with this kind of idealistic impression about what we're going to sign up for when we ultimately say I do and move everyone under the same roof. Right? Things are going well. There'll be some challenges, but all that other stuff that those people talk about that's so hard, it's not going to be hard for us, right? We start off believing that this deep connection that we experience throughout the dating stage is just going to keep growing more and more connected once we're married. We've heard some different things, though.
Yes, we have.
We heard things like, we used to talk for hours and hours and share everything when we were dating, but now we just don't ever seem to have time to connect like that. That was true for us. I mean, remember all those hours we spent on the phone when we were dating and just talking about all kinds of things? Or sometimes we hear things like, it feels like our relationship is all about the business of family and working on all the issues. Even when we have a date night, we mostly talk about all the problems that are going on. Man, we've experienced that one too, right?
We hear about that a lot.
Absolutely. The reality is that we can begin to feel distant as the challenges hit and the struggles of real life becomes our daily reality. And it's easy for blended family couples to just steadily drift apart and lose their connection. But why is that, and what can we do about it? We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
Well, one of the main reasons why disconnection seems to be inevitable and happens so quickly is because of the fact that our relationships have been reordered from the get-go. And this is what we mean by that. In a first family dynamic, the couple relationship comes first, and then the couple has a child and they become parents together. So the couple bond is created before any parental relationship develops, and it tends to be a stronger bond. However, in step families, our relationships have been reordered. The couple relationship comes after the pre-established parental relationships. And because parent-child relationships are bonded by blood, have deep connection and meaningful shared history behind them, the marital relationship often starts off as the weakest bond in the blended family. Now, the process of nurturing and prioritizing the marital partnership within the presence of the stronger child-parent bond, that's complicated.
Sure, yeah.
Frequently, the couple's romantic relationship gets lost in the midst of all these dynamics.
Yep.
The reality of this reordered relationships, it can create challenging dynamics that we call the stranded stranger and trapped teammates, as well as parent-child allegiances. These often lead to disappointment and disconnection within the marriage, as well as conflict, misunderstandings, and a breakdown in open communication.
Yeah, that's right. And so you can see how blended family marriage is definitely different than a first family marriage. And these differences are most often a challenge for blended family couples, ones that should be taken seriously. And we can say this with some authority because we've lived through this painful reality when we allowed a wedge of disconnection to grow between us, and it almost ended our marriage. And it was these challenging dynamics. You know, Kim feeling that frustration of being what we call the trapped teammate. She was stuck between me and her daughter, Annika. And of course, I was the stranded stranger, feeling abandoned and really on the outside of the circle. And for years, Kim struggled with a parent-child allegiance that was fueled by fear and guilt. Our continual battle with these complicated issues, and I use the term battle because that's really what it was. It was this battleground between us that swiftly eroded our connection and nearly destroyed our relationship. So how did we overcome this challenge and actually regain our connection? Well, we're going to be sharing some of that with you throughout the month of February. But a major turning point for us was simply acquiring knowledge. And like Ron Deal said, we just had to get smart about how we approached our blended family marriage.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me of a profound statement one husband made to us after he and his wife shared their painful struggles that had been going on for years and why they were ready to call it quits. And this is what he said: "We've been working really hard, but not very smart."
Yeah.
I thought that was so profound. So if you're listening today and you have no idea what the stranded stranger trapped teammate dynamic is or what a parent-child allegiance is, then it's time for you too to gain some fresh knowledge, because these are things that pretty much every blended family couple will experience to some degree at some time or another. And we've talked about our personal struggle with these dynamics before. But if you're new to the show and feel like you're in the dark about all of this, we want to encourage you, please go back and check out episodes 21 through 24 that describe the trapped teammate, stranded stranger, and how you can use specific strategies to overcome those challenges. And you might also want to go and check out episodes 59 through 63, and those are all about parent-child allegiances and how to get united as a couple and elevate your marriage within the presence of those reordered relationships we talked about. And we'll put links in the show notes for the first episode in each of those series so that you can get smart and gain knowledge. This is the knowledge you need to stay connected in your marriage and move forward in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's right. And moving forward can take some work, but it's so worth the effort. And, you know, so far today, we've touched on 3 challenging differences between a first family marriage and a blended family marriage. Blended families are formed out of loss and pain. They come with built-in stressors, and they usually experience some unforeseen disconnection due to the dynamic of these reordered relationships. But you know what? In their research, Gil and Brenda Stewart that we talked about earlier, they found that there are at least 72 differences between a first and a second marriage. That's wild. What we talked about today are just only the top 3 that we see the most. You know, from just about every blended family or couple that we've supported or coached,
Right.
we've heard some element of these 3. And remember, the purpose of exploring these differences is really to gain some insight and some understanding and some knowledge, because this kind of insight is the starting out point to learning how to approach these challenges in a way that keeps our marriage strong and connected, rather than getting stuck in our unrealistic expectations and what we thought our marriage experience would or should be like.
Yeah.
So over the next few weeks, that's where we're headed. We're going to be discovering strategies and making intentional efforts to strengthen our marriages. And we hope that you're going to stick with us through that whole month and that your marriage is going to be blessed because of it.
Yeah. And, you know, we mentioned earlier in the episode that we've got an exciting opportunity. It's kind of a challenge that will help you get really creative and hopefully overcome the frustration of finding ways to connect as a couple, even with the COVID restrictions that are going on right now, and even in the cold months of winter.
Oh, yes.
So one of the things we've struggled with in our marriage this past year is getting out of the rut, right? And actually doing something different when we have just a little time when we could be connecting.
Yeah.
We often recognize that there are moments or even a few hours in the week where we could connect. And the truth is, we really do want to connect. But when that moment comes, we typically draw a blank on what to do together, especially with the impact of COVID.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I recently came across this idea from the iMom website, which I found to be a great place for marriage and family resources. And this idea they call the Spark Jar. And the basic thought behind the Spark Jar is to take some intentional time up front to create a few simple ideas on how you can connect. Then when the moment comes that you can connect, you're not weighed down by the task of figuring out what are we going to do.
Yeah.
Plus, the Spark Jar automatically builds a little spontaneity into your COVID season dating.
Yeah, that's right.
So we don't usually give you homework on our podcast, but if you'd like to join us in giving this a try and have some fun experiencing something new to create more connection, more meaningful connection as a couple, then take us up on this homework assignment and go check out the iMom article. It's just one page.
Yep.
We've put a link to it in the show notes. Super simple. We're really excited to try it, and we hope that you'll also be encouraged to put the spark back in your relationship by using the Spark Jar idea right along with us. And we'll be sharing our progress with the Spark Jar throughout the month of February.
Yeah, because we're doing it ourselves.
Yep. And so we're going to continue exploring how we can love each other well and safeguard our marriages throughout the month.
Yes, we're really, honestly, we're both excited to use this Spark Jar idea. It's different, it's unique, it's one we haven't really heard about before. And by the time we're connecting with you next week, we should have maybe a fun update for you of whatever we discovered. And by the way, next week is also going to be fun anyway, because we're going to be sharing some thoughts with you about increasing your passion, intimacy, and commitment. And I mean, come on, who doesn't want more passion, intimacy, and commitment in their marriage, right?
Exactly.
So we want you to join us back here next week and just get geared up this February to be really investing in your blended family marriage. But for now, that makes today's episode a wrap.
Until next time.